very good evening. Welcome to State of Business on our television. I'm Ashing Sanibir Singha. Let's have a look at the headlines first. COVID-19 patients identified from faraway locations and authorities warn for strict health guidelines. Trading in stocks were halted for the second time as the S&P SL 20 index of liquid stocks plunged over 7.5% today. News in detail. Government Information Department announces that government so far has no plans to impose all-island curfew due to the new cluster of COVID-19 erupted at Dewlapitiya. Director General of Government Information Department Lanka, however, requests the general public not to be misled by such spreading rumours. Health Minister Pavitra Wanyarachi had a special meeting with the health authorities regarding the latest situation created by the finding of a COVID-19 patient from the civil society for the first time in Sri Lanka after a period of 2 months. A female garment factory worker tested positive for the coronavirus from Dewlapitiya yesterday, and within hours the health authorities diagnosed her daughter was also positive for the COVID-19 test. Accordingly, another 69 people, including factory workers, have tested positive for COVID-19 from Minuangoda area today morning. Ministry sources confirmed that 69 factory employees were identified out of 150 PCR tests, and they have plans to carry out 2,000 PCR tests within the day. Health authorities also diagnosed 4 other employees who worked at the same factory and transferred to the IDH Hospital Colombo from Kurunegala, Monaragala and Jaffna hospitals this evening. Hospital at Minuangoda will be completely allocated for the treatments of the COVID-19 patients identified from the Gampaha district. Meanwhile, the General Hospital in Gampaha will be available for the admission of the COVID-19 suspicious persons and carrying out of PCR tests. The towns of Minuangoda, Dewlapitiya and Wayangoda are under police curfew, and the school vacation for the government schools were commenced today, a week earlier due to the unexpected situation. President's Media Division in a statement to the media said that not to be deceived by the false news which is being shared on social media in the light of the current situation in the country. It also stresses that to pay attention only to the news received by official electronic and print media and the announcements from the Government Information Department and the President's media. Meanwhile, public health and security officials are in a difficult exercise to trace contacts of COVID-19 positive employees of the Minuangoda apparel factory. Public Health Inspectors Union Sri Lanka said that the records which they had been provided by the factory are permanent addresses of employees, but their actual residences are completely different. Further, Health Ministry also requests the general public not to engage in panic buying from supermarkets, as there is no need to do so at present. On the other hand, Chief Epidemiologist Dr. Sudat Samaravira said that they had noticed people rushing to buying groceries and get their vehicles filled with fuel, and this kind of behavior would further intensify the risk of spreading the virus. Meanwhile, Government Medical Officers Association in a media briefing said that the situation should not be neglected and mentioned about 3 guidelines that should be adhered to in combating the COVID-19 threat at this moment. The 3 factors identified by the GMOA are the political leadership, health and its capacity, as well as the public assistance to defeat the coronavirus.
We have to analyze the risk before taking action. Therefore, to analyze the risk, we have to do the contact tracing. The world norm is that we have to do at least above 90% contact tracing to be successful. Therefore, we hope that the authorities will take action to trace the contacts all over the country, because the risk is there all over the country, because some of the workers are even living within Jaffna district and others all over the country. And the other thing is the aggressive testing and the repeated testing. We have informed the authorities that even at this moment the testing is not adequate. You all know that the capacity for testing, they have declared that we have the capacity to do PCR testing for 3,000 to 3,500. Now you see that yesterday it was only 1,148. It is very far less than the maximum number we can afford. Therefore, we have urged the authorities to do the maximum number, and it will take around 72 hours, 3 days time to cover these things and have the assessment regarding to the risk. And our responses should be equal to the risk, and therefore we hope that we will, especially the community will take the standard health precautions like hand washing, wearing a mask, and distancing where possible.
In its efforts to popularize the digital transactions amongst the general public, Central Bank today launched the program dubbed Colambata Lanka QR Regional Awareness Campaign at the Central Bank in Colombo with the presence of several ministers, state ministers and relevant stakeholders. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka named this year as the Year of Digital Transactions with the objective of propagating the digital transactions. Thus, to this end, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, together with financial institutions with Lanka QR-enabled payment apps, launched Ratapurama Lanka QR Island-wide Awareness Campaign on 12 September 2020 at the Central Bank of Sri Lanka Regional Office in Matale under the theme of Matale to Lanka QR. Moreover, as a follow-up to this initiative, the Colambata Lanka QR Regional Awareness Campaign was kicked off today under the presence of Central Bank Governor Professor W.D. Lakshman, Minister of Trade Dr. Bandula Gunawardena, Finance and Capital Markets and Public Enterprise Reform State Minister Ajit Niwad Cabral, Development of Samurdhi Home Economy, Microfinance, Self-Employment and Businesses and Underutilized State Resources State Minister Shehan Semasinghe, Cooperative Services, Marketing Development and Consumer Protection State Minister Lasantha Alagiyawanna and many other dignitaries. Lanka QR is a common quick response code standard adopted by financial institutions in Sri Lanka to facilitate fast, secure and low-cost digital payments to any merchant, especially small and medium enterprises. It enables customers to pay merchants directly from their bank accounts using a Lanka QR compliant mobile payment app, and the payment is instantly credited to the merchant's bank account. There is no cost to the customer in using Lanka QR-based payments, and it is envisaged that this would encourage digital payments in the economy and reduce the cost of cash management as well as formalize the informal sector. Stay tuned for more news after this short break. Welcome back after the break. Addressing the launch of the Lanka QR Awareness Program today, State Minister for Finance and Capital Markets and Public Enterprise Reforms Ajit Niwad Cabral stresses that cyber security should be highly maintained in performing the digital transactions and to gain confidence of the general mass towards those.
මම තාක්ෂණය යොදාගෙන අපි මේ ගෙවීම් කරනකොට අපි සැලකිලිමත් විය යුතු මූලික කාරණාවක් තමයි සිකියුරිටි කියන එක, ආරක්ෂාව, සයිබර් සිකියුරිටි. ඒ ගැන තමයි මම හිතන්නේ බොහෝ දෙනෙක් හුඟක් කල්පනාකාරීව යන්නේ. මොකද ඒක නැතුව, සයිබර් සිකියුරිටි එක නැතුව අපිට මේ ගෙවීම් පද්ධති කරන්නට බෑ. Tech developments. We have to keep abreast of the technical developments and the technological developments if we are to make sure that we are on top of the situation. අපිට මොනවද තියෙන අන්‍යාගත අභියෝග? මම හිතන්නේ තාක්ෂණය ඉතාමත්ම ඉක්මනින් දියුණු වෙනවා. දැන් අද මෙහි එළි දක්වපු තාක්ෂණය 2016 දී ඉන්දියාවේ පාවිච්චි කරන්න පටන් ගන්න තිබුණා. QR codes. 2017 දී තායිලන්තේ පාවිච්චි කරලා තිබුණා. 2011 දී පටන් ගත්ත චීනේ WeChat කියලා. ඉතින් අපි ඒ පැත්තේ බලද්දී අවුරුදු 3-4ක් පසුපස හිටියත් ඒක දිගු කාලයක් කියලා අපිට හිතන්නත් පුළුවන්. ඉදිරියේදී මේ තාක්ෂණයත් එක්ක අපි සම්බන්ධ වෙලා යනට නම් අපි මේ තාක්ෂණයේ සිදුවෙන වෙනස්කම් දිනපතාම හොයන්නට ඕනේ.
Highlighting the formula to ease the trade and attract more investors to Sri Lanka, US Ambassador to Sri Lanka and Maldives, Elena B. Teplit, says that Sri Lanka should work on stabilizing its tax policy, simplifying registration of property and improving access to credit. She made these observations addressing the recent 28th Annual General Meeting of the American Chamber of Commerce in Sri Lanka.
What are some of the things that could be done? Stabilizing tax policy, I think, would be very helpful, particularly for foreign investors, but for domestic investors as well. There have been wide swings over the last couple of years that have really impacted the bottom line and made it very difficult to put products out in a way that are affordable to the consumer. Simplifying the registration of property would be another issue, or even just obtaining property through appropriate means to establish production facilities or whatever it is that needs to be done. Improving access to credit. I think is also important. I think for most of the big companies, that's usually less of an issue, but for the small and medium enterprises, that's definitely more challenging. These are just some of the issues that are out there around which that I regularly have conversations with the government. I think if there's focus and political will, there can be improvements in this space. Facilitations can be implemented, and the ease of doing business is going to get a lot better.
Speaking further, US Ambassador to Sri Lanka, Elena B. Teplitz, stresses that private sector-led growth is the key requirement to brace the COVID-19 recovery.
Private sector-led growth remains a very important feature of our policy globally, but here in Sri Lanka as well. And we continue to believe that the future is going to be generated by the private sector, generating jobs, generating new industry, bringing innovation, whether that's in the form of technology or in some other space. We think that that's what is going to lead a kind of post-COVID resurgence, if you will. Private sector-led approach is going to be really essential. You need the finances that come with the private sector, and I would argue also the innovation and flexibility that come with the private sector.
We'll be back with stock updates soon after this short break. Welcome back after the break. The all-share price index of the Colombo Stock Exchange today recorded the highest drop in a single day after Sri Lanka reported the first case of COVID-19 community infection in several months. Thus, the trading at Colombo Stock Exchange ended on a negative note today. The all-share price index dropped 462.99 points to close at 5,587.18, and the S&P SL 20 dropped 165.92 points to close at 2,288.51. The turnover was 3.8 billion rupees and over 268 million shares were traded. Up next are forex rates. And that's all the news for today. Let's all be alert on the current situation of the country and be safe. See you tomorrow with State of Business at the usual time. Until then, take care. Good night.